Hi, this is Terry Farrell, Dax from Deep Space Nine, and welcome to Random Trek.
Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Random Trek. I am your lovelorn captain, Christopher Ingle, joined as always by my first officer, a man who would make a Ferengi cringe at the sight of going into Starfleet, Commander Brennan, the Mystical Mar. Brennan, how are we doing?
Doing good.
This week, we are at Deep... We don't always make these intros up. Sometimes it just comes up.
But I couldn't think one.
Yeah. Well, today we are on Deep Space Nine. We're on Deep Space Nine, Season 3, Episode 14, Heart of Stone, directed by Alexander Singer. I'll get to him and some of his lists later of some of the episodes and things he's done. But we love some Deep Space Nine. Oh, so much. And this one is a great doozy. This is a good example of when your A plot and your B plot both are really good.
Yeah, I would say so, yes.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one. In fact, I remembered the B plot, but the A plot I kind of forgot about. So this was a nice treat to get back into it and see what was going on. Let's get into the episode and take a look. So, we open up on board a runabout where Odo and Kira, first of all, they are arguing with each other back and forth like an old married couple about, you know, it would have been nice to have been invited. Well, you don't like to go. I didn't think you want to go. I just would have liked to have been invited. Very common married couple arguments, even though they're not married. And they end up in pursuit of a Maquis raider that they find. They follow the Maquis vessel to a small moon. When they land, they find the vessel empty, and they split up to search for the pilot. After a while, Odo comes back and finds that Kira has her foot caught in this mass of crystal that Odo cannot remove. And the crystal is slowly growing and covering up Kira. And to add to it, there are seismic tremors in the rocks around them. So the area is unstable and Kira is being slowly crushed by this crystal formation. So Kira says, Odo, just get out of here. Go, we'll figure this out. Go. He first attempts to free her using an ultrasonic generator, but it doesn't quite work. And while they're waiting, he starts to talk about his past as they wait for this crystal to shatter. And we start to see Odo's feelings come out for Major Kira. That Odo can't stand the thought of losing Kira, and that he loves Kira desperately. And just as Kira is nearly engulfed in the crystal, he actually confesses this to her. And she responds back to him that she loves him too. It's at this point that Odo backs up, pulls a phaser on Major Kira. And he demands to know who she really is. And he says, Kira never would have said those things. Not in a million years. You are not Major Kira. And we find that the crystal and the Kira is actually the changeling, specifically the female changeling that we see throughout the series. The one he met on the changeling planet, as well as the one that kind of becomes our adversary through the rest of the series. Played beautifully, always, by Salome Jens. And she reveals that she stole the Maquis ship to try to convince Odo to return to the Dominion. She wanted to see how far he would go. She sees that he's dedicated to the solids. There's not much chance. So she says, Kira is over here. Go save her if you want to. It's your choice. He ends up finding Kira and tells her about the founder, but does not tell her about his feelings. Meanwhile, in Deep Space Nine, we see that Nog is trying to convince Commander Sisko to write a letter of recommendation and to sponsor an application for him as a non-Federation citizen to attend Starfleet Academy. Sisko's very dubious of this because Nog's a lazeabout. He messes around. He's always got schemes and plans, and he just doesn't think Nog would be a good member of Starfleet, let alone in the Academy. So Sisko and Dax are talking, and they said, let's give him a little test. I want you to take Nog and have him inventory the cargo bay completely on his own with no help. Okay. Which he does. He complies, and not only does he comply, he does it quickly and efficiently. But for some reason, Sisko still... Very well. Sisko has his doubts. He just doesn't understand. Why would Nog, a Ferengi, want to join Starfleet? Starfleet kind of stands for everything the Ferengi doesn't. And so Sisko brings him in and says, I'm not giving you a recommendation. I'm sorry, I just don't think you possess what it takes to make it. And he is kind of goading Nog to tell him why he really wants to join Starfleet. What's the game? What's the edge? And what we hear, and actually we've kind of seen throughout the episode, is that Nog doesn't want to turn into his father, or at least the man his father is now. At this point, Rom is not... he's not working with the station maintenance. He's not moving his way up. He's not with Lita. He's just Quark's lackey. And that's all he can ever hope to be, with the possible chance that he could get the bar. And yet he admits his father's a genius.
Yeah, even though Nog admits his dad is brilliant.
He does. He admits his dad's brilliant. And he says he doesn't want to end up like his father. I love how he says, I have my father's hands and my uncle's tenacity. And if I put those things together, I can do anything. Sisko, I think this was the kind of answer he was waiting for. This is what he wanted to see. Is there really a drive? Is there really a push? And he says, okay, you'll have it. I will send it away. Which he does. And of course, as we know, Rom does eventually get in and become, by the end of everything, gets to be a lieutenant. Quark. Yeah, Nog. Quark is against this.
Rom becomes Grand Nagus. That's a different story.
That's bigger. That's later.
Yeah, that's a bigger story, yeah.
But Quark is against it. And Rom stands up to Quark and says, no, I'm proud of my son. If this is what he wants to do, he needs to go do it. Leave him alone. Which is what happens. So, yeah, let's hit A plot, B plot, because they don't interact at all, which is actually kind of nice in this case. Let's talk about our A plot. How do we feel about Odo and Kira? I've always felt a little off. Not that it's bad. It's just they feel such an odd pairing, but it works.
They are, yes.
And this is, I'm not going to say this is the start of the relationship, but at least this is the start of seeing that together. She mentions she likes working with him. She enjoys that. The real Kira mentions this. She enjoys it. But they're arguing in the beginning like a married couple. Really started this in a positive place. What did you think of that argument starting out?
It sounded very much like something Odo would do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the idea of, I just wanted to be invited, we know that Odo is not the most open emotionally of any of the characters. In fact, arguably he spent most of his existence as a humanoid, being kind of distant. We've seen that. Kira is a little bit more open and emotional. probably because, the stuff that she had to deal with. With the Cardassian occupation. So yeah, they are very, very different. But I think I buy their relationship. Now, there are a lot of relationships, romantic, platonic, among the characters of Star Trek in general. And as far as a romantic couple, they might not be my favorite. But that's really no fault of anyone, just because, when you have so many dynamic characters, it can be easy to get lost in the shuffle.
Right.
Certainly, I think the best romantic relationship in Deep Space Nine is probably Worf and Dex. But I think Kira and Odo, they make an interesting pair. But nonetheless, it does end up being emotionally, when we get to that final scene between the two of them, in the Deep Space Nine finale, you really feel it. You really do.
I still would love for them to be able to be back together again. I don't see why he has to stay with the Link. I don't understand why he can't come back. He's healed them. He's repaired them. And I just don't see why they can't. But that's neither here nor there. That just shows we love this relationship.
It's true.
It's fabulous. And when we talk about strong characters, let's head over into our Ferengi. Ferengi before Deep Space Nine were a joke. They were. First few seasons, they were meant to be these horrible, villainous things. And Deep Space Nine really, really developed them into something more. And to have Quark, who is amazing, has great episodes unto himself. But Nog, Nog is this imp. He's childish. He's always into schemes. And, he is the typical Ferengi as the definition is now. But he becomes fascinating when he wants to almost forsake that. Or, in a way, kind of bridge the gap. Because he doesn't want to completely abandon all of the tenets of being a Ferengi. But he wants to do more. He wants to be more. And I really love it when he says, I don't care about profit. That's sacrilege.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen with the Ferengi that they are a very... Their culture does not have a sense of you can be more than what you're assigned to be. Now, obviously, Ferengi are always trying to make more money, but they kind of get pigeonholed in terms of there doesn't seem to be any upward mobility in their culture. You kind of get stuck in you are what you are. And, to be a good Ferengi means to follow the system. But Nog comes along and says, I don't want to follow the system. Because he sees what the Ferengi system has done to his dad and his uncle.
Right.
And so he wants to be something beyond that. Which, as you said, the way that Deep Space Nine expanded the culture of the Ferengi. While they are comical, they are also an interesting species. In terms of representing a lot of the bad things about our modern capitalist society. And it's good to see Nog to say, I don't want to follow the system. And as we see with Quark's mother, the Ferengi culture changes because of people who decide, I don't want to be what culture tells me to be. And we ultimately in Lower Decks see where that leads.
I was just going to say that we see a nice combination when we think about Rom. Rom is more than willing to have everything change, to accept what Moogie was setting forth with them, Moogie being their mother. And that women can have businesses. Women can be an important part. That was a big deal, and he supported that and pushed that. And out when he became Negus, that stuck. That stayed. One of the interesting things I was going to say, and you mentioned it, is when we see his interactions with Freeman in Lower Decks, he's messing with her and trying to take advantage of her, something a Ferengi would do. But in the end, he's testing her. Does the Federation respect Ferengi culture? Are you coming in here just to change me? Are you coming in here? They don't approach it that way. Instead, they're like, well, we want this, this, and this, and this, and to see if the Federation was going to give it to them. Well, we want this, 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 and this, and this. Let's see if the Federation gives it to us. And it's not until Freeman gets clever, embraces Ferengi ideals, to turn the tables on him, and he says, you know what? You understand Ferengi tradition. You get it. You know what? I'm going to give you exactly what you came in here and asked for in the beginning. Thank you. That's a guy who's willing to see things change, but also embrace the culture and individuality of his species. And this family embraces that. And even Quark, I would say, of the three, four, because we'll count Moogie too. Of the four of this family that we've ever met, is probably the most traditional of Ferengi, and yet he too gets in trouble sometimes. Doing things he shouldn't. For example, falling for a Klingon, sort of. It's fighting, and then embrace.
Yes.
It was a great episode, actually. It was really good. Weird, but good. And he didn't have to fight, and he fought, but still, nonetheless, Quark is probably the most normal. And what's interesting, too, is we see that idealism, that capitalism that Quark stands for continues on. Because when we even go into the 31st century, Starfleet Academy, there is a Quark's bar in the 31st century outside in San Francisco.
Yes.
We see Quark's bars all over. He franchised. After DS9, he franchised. So he was able to succeed and to embrace all of that, and yet his family also embraces the ability to change. That's why I love these core characters. Why this works.
Yes.
Because I believe Nog. I believe Rom. And you know what? Even though Quark is being stubborn, I see where Quark is coming from too. He's wrong, but I get where he's coming from. And you've got to have that basis somewhere. So I really enjoyed this. I think it was good on both parts. This budding romance to see more for Odo. The origin and the sadness of Odo's my name literally means nothing. That was a great conversation, and him saying, I think in his own way, he was saying, I feel like I'm nothing, at least being around her, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I love that. It's a romantic thought, very, very romantic, and, it's vulnerable, and it was so good. It is so rare that we get, I would say, equal time A and B plots, and that both are really fleshed out. So I think overall, for me, this is a required viewing for DS9. This is a really good episode that has stakes later and down the line, and obviously Nog is going to join the Federation, and we deal with PTSD and a lot with Nog. And Odo, the whole thing with Odo and, you know, his people. And this is just a fabulous episode.
Yeah, it's a good beginning to where we go from here.
Mm-hmm. And early on, too, Season 3, man, consistently is where Star Trek picks up every time. Season 3, except the original series.
Yeah.
Oh. Alrighty, next week we have Star Trek Voyager. Good old V'ger. Alright. Wheel of Morality, turn. Tell us the season that we should burn. Season 5, Episode 9, 30 Days. This is the one that is Tom Paris-centric, where he is in the brig for 30 days. Also, pretty good one.
Yes.
So we will take a look at that next week. And end of this month, we will be taking a look at the Patrick Stewart-led miniseries, Moby Dick. Cannot wait to take a look at those as well. Brennan, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky at brennmar.bluesky.social. Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube at Page Turners They Were Not.
You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at CIngle1984. But as always, we end every episode. Kapla! We live long and prosper.
Peace and long life.